Hello, I'm Esther Gitu Yuwat. It's Tuesday, August 22nd. This is Africa 54.
The African Union suspends Niger from all activities. The action reiterates international calls for the coup leaders to restore democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum to power. Over 6 million voters are registered to vote in Wednesday's Zimbabwe general elections. The opposition is hoping to defy the odds and end the stranglehold of the ruling ZANU-PF party. And Zimbabwean citizens tell the Voice of America what issues are most important to them just prior to casting their ballots. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54.
We begin our broadcast with a developing story out of West Africa. The African Union is suspending Niger from all activities following a military coup on July 26th, according to a statement released on Tuesday. The move reiterates calls for the coup leaders to release and restore democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum to power. The AU Peace and Security Council is keenly aware of ECOWAS's decision to ready a standby force for a possible military intervention in Niger and has asked the AU Commission to assess the economic, social and security implications of deploying such a force. The African Union is calling on all of its member states and the international community to refrain from any action that could legitimize Niger's junta and says it strongly rejects any interference from countries outside of Africa. Now to Zimbabwe, where a critical general election is being held on Wednesday. The campaigning is over, and the voting is likely to determine the future of a Southern African nation endowed with vast mineral resources and rich agricultural land. The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission has registered nearly 1 million more voters than for the last general election. Independent research points to a wary mood among the electorate before the presidential and parliamentary elections. For many voters in the educated but underemployed population, the stress to put food on the table may be slowing citizen interest in politics. Zimbabwe's opposition is hoping to defy the odds and end the stranglehold of the ZANU-PF in elections. But there are expectations that the contest may be skewed in favor of a party that has ruled for decades. David Doyle has this election preview.
Zimbabweans vote in an election this week that many hope could end a lengthy economic crisis in what was once considered one of Africa's most prosperous countries. Irene Mutero, a vendor on the streets of the capital Harare, is one of those who say what they want is change.
Things are tough for everyone. I'm registered to vote, and I'm going to vote.
But hope is tempered by expectations that Wednesday's contest is skewed in favor of the ZANU-PF. The party has been in power for more than 4 decades. For most of that time, Robert Mugabe was at the helm. He led the violent seizure of white-owned farms in 2000. Zimbabwe has been in economic turmoil ever since. Mugabe was ousted in a military coup in 2017 and replaced by longtime ally Emmerson Mnangagwa. At his penultimate rally, Mnangagwa said they need more time to build our motherland.
We are determined to lift more and more of our people out of poverty into higher quality of life.
Mnangagwa won Zimbabwe's first post-Mugabe election in 2018, which was unsuccessfully challenged by the opposition. Political analyst Dr. Pedzisai Ruhania says this election will again be contentious.
Of course, it's headed for another decision. It is very clear. How do you go into an election without a voters' roll?
That's a reference to one dispute in this election. The opposition Citizens Coalition for Change has taken the Electoral Commission to court to demand access to electronic copies of the voters' roll, so it can be searched and analysed. The Electoral Commission has said all parties have been given printed copies. The courts have yet to rule in what is one of several legal challenges mounted by the opposition ahead of the vote. Though there are 11 candidates vying for the presidency, the election is really a battle between the CCC's Nelson Chamisa, a 45-year-old lawyer and pastor, and 80-year-old Mnangagwa, who goes by the nickname the Crocodile. At a rally in Bulawayo, Chamisa said he had told Regional Bloc, the Southern African Development Community, that Mnangagwa was not preparing to win, but plotting to rig.
He stole the election in 2018, but this time I will not accept to allow him to steal the election again.
The opposition says its supporters are routinely arrested under Zimbabwe's tough public order laws, and that there have been cases of violent intimidation by ZANU-PF supporters. Police have blocked some of the opposition's rallies. They deny targeting bias and say rallies for both major parties have been stopped for reasons of public safety. A ZANU-PF spokesperson has denied allegations of voter intimidation and unfair electoral processes, accusing the opposition of being obsessed with criticising the electoral process so that they have something to say after losing. Wilbert Mandinde of the Zimbabwe Human Rights NGO Forum says it is not proper for members of the opposition to struggle to campaign.
The human rights situation in Zimbabwe has been bad. Elections are meant to be something in which people look forward to, in which people then go and exercise their right to vote.
Nevertheless, the opposition hopes it can defy the odds and win this time. They're counting on frustrations over the long-running economic crisis. Inflation is among the highest in the world, while only 30% of Zimbabweans hold formal jobs. Political analysts say young voters, who have never known a prosperous Zimbabwe, could play a significant role. 1/6 of the registered electorate are first-time voters.
That was David Doyle of Reuters reporting. Campaigning for Zimbabwe's general elections has ended, and voters and candidates are just hours away from heading to the polling stations across the country on Wednesday. Earlier, I spoke to Kennedy Masiye, an international human rights advocate and a native of Zimbabwe. I began by asking him what's at stake in this election.
Yeah, what is at stake in this election is basically the legitimacy of the whole system of governance. In Zimbabwe, since time immemorial, since the 2000s, elections have been contested, and this year's election is an opportunity, to have at least a legitimate government at the end of this election, like this Wednesday.
What do Zimbabweans really want?
Zimbabweans right now really want to just be happy, have food on their plates, have employment opportunities, just go to work, feed their families, have pensions. Right now, Zimbabweans just want to be happy. They just want food. They just want an economy that is stable.
So what would Mnangagwa win or Nelson Chamisa's win mean for the people of Zimbabwe?
Mnangagwa win basically would not bring about anything which we have not seen in the past 5 years. In the first 5 years, we've seen, an increased closure of democratic spaces, non-governmental organizations, or even human rights activists, have found it very difficult to operate in Zimbabwe. As we speak right now, we've got political prisoners such as Job Scala, Jacob Gari Vume. They are all incarcerated for speaking out against the government. A win for Chamisa basically will bring in a new wave of politics within our governance. Chamisa is 45 years, he's young, he's got a lot of ideas that he's postulating to the electorate, and he's been there for a while. We know that he has been tried and tested in the government of national unity, and we've seen that he has the leadership qualities that are much needed to take Zimbabwe forward. And him being a young person, he connects to the majority of young people in Zimbabwe. Right now, young people in Zimbabwe are being left out of opportunities that other young people are getting in other countries, Africa, or even internationally. So a win for Chamisa will basically bring about hope to the youth. It also bring about hope to the elderly who have been suffering under the current government, which has extinguished their pensions. So at least Chamisa's win brings about hope that at least things can change for the better. Being carried forward by young people, a young generation that has got new ideas, and which is also vibrant.
There are some people who have said President Mnangagwa's win would mean life for them, that he should even be president for life. What do you make of that?
I think those are misplaced thoughts because that's what we actually, that is actually what has brought us Zimbabwe to where we are right now, where people idolized Mugabe until he died almost in office. It's something that is so sad that we have someone like Mugabe coming in as a new coming in with a government that he says the new dispensation, when they were actually the architects or the main people in Mugabe's regime who actually caused all the troubles that Zimbabweans are facing right now. So for people to say they want a Mnangagwa for life, it's basically misplaced and rather dangerous because there's always we fear that probably if Mnangagwa gets into his next 5 years, he will probably try to amend the constitution. So those are some of the fears that are there, that he might probably have those ideas where he thinks that he can go beyond the 5 years that he will be granted in this past election, in this current election.
That was Kennedy Masiye, an international human rights advocate and a native of Zimbabwe, speaking to me earlier. As Wednesday's general election nears, Zimbabwean citizens are expressing their views and tell VOA what issues are important to them.
My word of advice to whoever is going to be the president of Zimbabwe, they have to address joblessness here in Zimbabwe. Hyperinflation, things are getting out of hand, we are not affording. We want a decent economy where things are not looted, the resources of the nation are not looted, where everyone is respected, where there are no human rights abuses.
Us as the youth, we need jobs. All of us are vendors in this country. There's no improvement, there's no food. We're going to school, university, there's no change. We're all by the streets, everyone.
We want free and fair elections. We want the free and fair in the judiciary.
I want to be there for people and to help them with the jobs and everything, and to change our situation.
That was Zimbabwean citizens there talking about what issues are important to them. VOA's Paul Ndiho spoke to Rike Mukonza, a Zimbabwean analyst and professor at Tshwane University of Technology in South Africa, about the second general election since the removal of former longtime leader Robert Mugabe.
It has been busy on the ground for political parties that are gunning for support from the voters in Zimbabwe. But in my analysis, the main contest is between the ruling party, ZANU-PF, and the main opposition, which is Citizens Coalition for Change, otherwise known as CCC. There are also other political parties, but I don't see them really, making, a serious challenge to the two that I've mentioned. In terms of campaigning, yes, we have seen these two, doing their rallies. And they've been able to attract significant numbers.
There's been a lot of complaints, especially from the opposition, that in some cases they're restricted in places where to campaign, how to go about their campaign. Last week they arrested a whole bunch of opposition leaders. What's your take on that?
It's really regrettable that the police and in some cases the courts are being used as instruments for repression, because what they are doing, particularly what the police is doing in arbitrarily arresting, opposition supporters, is a recipe for elections that could be contested. The opposition parties could, raise those issues to challenge the freeness and the fairness.
What would you say is the single most important issue that these candidates are campaigning on this time around?
The economy hasn't been performing well. It's before everyone to see. Yes, ZANU-PF may argue that they've tried their best to deal with issues of infrastructure, to deal with issues of currency volatility, but overall, the economy hasn't been performing well. And we know when the economy is not performing well, there are a number of attendant problems that come with that. For example, unemployment figures continue to be very high and unsustainable. The young people who are coming from universities and other institutions of higher learning do not have anywhere to go in terms of being absorbed within the economy.
Joseph Stalin used to say that it doesn't matter how many people show up to vote, but what matters is the person who counts the vote. And in this particular context, it couldn't be more true for your scenario in Zimbabwe. You have Emmerson Mnangagwa, who is the incumbent president, who is also in charge of appointing the people who are going to count the vote. Would that in any way play in his favor?
You are very correct in your observation. The fact that Emmerson Mnangagwa has a certain level of leverage and control over, who runs the election puts him at an advantage. And I have no doubt that the statement that you have mentioned, where he who counts, I think he has a very huge say on the outcome of the elections.
That was Ricky Mukonza, a Zimbabwean analyst and professor at Tshwane University of Technology, speaking to VOA's Paul Ndiho. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, young Nigerians team up to clean up polluted areas for sustainable development. Stay with us.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
In other news, the three-day BRICS Summit of Emerging Economies is underway Tuesday in South Africa, and notably absent is Russian President Vladimir Putin, who is participating via video call after his travel to South Africa was complicated by an international criminal court arrest warrant issued for him in March over the abduction of children from Ukraine. Expansion is expected to top the summit agenda. A convoy of around 300 supply trucks carrying mostly food has arrived in Niger's capital, Niamey, as Burkina Faso came to the aid of its sanctions-hit neighbor. ECOWAS imposed sanctions on Niger after army officers toppled President Mohamed Bazoum in a coup last month. Benin and Nigeria have closed their borders, disrupting supplies. And Morocco's King Mohammed VI celebrated his 60th birthday Monday away from the public eye. The monarch is credited with effectively maintaining stability in a volatile region, in part through suppressing criticism, as well as modernizing the economy and pursuing assertive diplomacy. But his efforts have fallen short in addressing the profound inequalities that continue to plague Moroccan society. Pollution from discarded plastic metals and other items is persistent in Nigeria. Some young people are doing what they can to clean up the trash and also make strides towards sustainable development. Gibson Emeka reports from Abuja in this story narrated by Salem Solomon.
Rita Adehai began her journey into green innovation in 2018, armed with a passion for waste recycling. Her social enterprise, EcoBarter, buys waste from Nigerian households and converts it into new products like fibers for pillows, shoes, and bags.
I've always said as a child that I want to leave the world better than I met it.
The geology student says she reaches people through collection points where they can drop off their household waste in exchange for money.
Is we are enabling households and every other person use their waste as a currency. The vision for EcoBarter is to bring sustainability to both people and planet. And when you talk about planet, you talk about sustainability, you talk about circular economy, you talk about the green economy.
In aiding the transition to a so-called green economy, Adehai is also making a small dent in Nigeria's unemployment rate. About 300 people work for EcoBarter, making the minimum wage of $39 a month or more. 23-year-old Hanatu Zakaria, an employee of EcoBarter, says she's happy to be employed.
When I was not working before, things was difficult for me. But when I start working, everything is going normal. And even if I want to have my own shop that I will be doing myself, I can employ many women.
The job appeals to young Nigerians with a streak of idealism. Speaking at the 2023 International Youth Day, Adesa Okadeji, who works for the Nigeria Youth Sustainable Development Goals program, says her goal is to make life easier for young people.
The outcome for this event is a call to action to meaningfully engage young people towards achieving and advancing the SDGs in Nigeria, which will highlight the barriers and solutions to reducing inequalities and increasing development.
It has not been easy. Adehai says she has had to battle Nigeria's lack of awareness on recycling and the high cost of coordinating enterprises that will transform the trash. Despite the challenges, Adehai is making her mark and believes that with the right support, more young people in Nigeria will have the creativity, potential, and capacity to make a difference. For Gibson Emeka in Abuja, Nigeria, Salim Solomon, VOA News.
The healthcare system in Mozambique is apparently in shambles, according to the peoplesdispatch.org website. The website says the system is crumbling due to a shortage of money and poor governance. The system also frequently lacks vital medicines, supplies, and medical professionals. The People's Dispatch reports that healthcare in Mozambique is also being plagued by intermittent walkouts of healthcare workers. Striking workers have complained that they lack personal protective equipment, and they also want more pay. We'll continue to follow this story and report on any updates. Miscarriage is the most common reason for losing a baby during pregnancy, and it's defined differently worldwide. VOA health reporter Mkamiti Kibayasi has more. Hello, Mkamiti.
Hello, Esther. The World Health Organization says pregnancy loss is defined differently around the world, but in general, a baby who dies before 28 weeks of pregnancy is referred to as a miscarriage. And babies who die at or after 28 weeks are clarified as stillbirths. One stillbirth happens every 16 seconds. That's almost 2 million babies that are still born every year. To understand more about what causes miscarriage and prevention, I am joined by Dr. Simon Kigondo, a gynecologist and CEO, Excella Healthcare at the Kenya Medical Association in Nairobi. Dr. Kigondo, welcome to Africa 54. And
thank you.
Explain to us what causes a miscarriage.
So a miscarriage is the unexpected ending of a pregnancy before it is viable. Viable meaning that it is able to live outside the womb. So there are several causes, which include chromosomal abnormalities, which causes about 50% of the miscarriages. Then you can have infections, which are known to help cause miscarriage, such as toxoplasma, rubella, and diseases like that. Then hormonal imbalances. Also, the pregnancies are maintained by hormones. So if these are insufficient, then you can lead to miscarriages. The uterus, if it has some form of abnormalities, then miscarriages can occur. When the pregnancy is slightly bigger, if the cervix, the end of the uterus is weak, what is called an incompetent cervix, then you can get miscarriages. Lifestyle factors such as smoking and alcohol can increase the chances of miscarriages. and disorders of an immune system like lupus. Some diseases like kidney disease, congenital heart diseases, and diabetes and thyroid disease are related to increased miscarriages, radiation, and also we have severe malnutrition, and also some medicines such as isoretinoin and thalidomide and drugs like that.
Dr. Kigondu, is it possible for a woman have several miscarriages and still have successful live birth?
Yes, we have seen several, a lot of the gynecologists call cases which come to us. We have seen several who have had a lot of miscarriages, and we managed to successfully take them to term. So once you identify and solve some of the causes of the miscarriage, then that can help. Other cases you are not able. So there are some medications and vitamins that we give that help these ladies continue to term. Some who have had more than 2 miscarriages and are termed recurrent pregnancy loss, there is some injection, for instance, like heparin that we give to try to assist these cases. So yes, they have been.
And what is the difference between a missed and a complete miscarriage?
So a miscarriage is a pregnancy loss. That means the pregnancy has come out. But sometimes the pregnancy might have died, for instance, and the woman who is pregnant is unaware of this pregnancy. So pregnancy loss, that is called a missed miscarriage. Other terminologies used in miscarriage include complete, which means that the pregnancy has been lost and it has come out totally from the uterus. That is a complete miscarriage, meaning that if you do an ultrasound, you will not see any tissue and the bleeding subsides.
Very brief, what needs to be done to prevent a miscarriage?
So once you have identified a cause of previous miscarriages, then this can be treated. But generally, attending to prenatal cases, prenatal care appointments very well with your doctor is important. Maintaining your weight well, avoiding risk factors such as medicines that can cause miscarriages, drinking alcohol and cigarettes during pregnancy, taking some important prenatal vitamins, and doing regular exercise are some of the measures that can be taken to prevent.
Thanks, Dr. Kigondu. Dr. Simon Kigondu is a gynecologist and CEO, Excella Healthcare at the Kenya Medical Association in Nairobi. That's all for today's Health Report.
Thanks, Mkamiti, for that very informative health report. Be sure to watch our health report every Tuesday right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.